Welcome to Sizzle Fantasy Sports, the channel with the most sizzling hot fantasy takes and analysis, presented by your host, Gavin.
Rodgers clean pocket, throws the middle of the end zone. Devontae, touchdown, and a dagger!
How's it going, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we've got Eric along with us to do a 2021 fantasy football Dynasty startup mock draft for you guys. And before we get started with things today, if you're looking for any extra content or opportunities in the Dynasty realm of things, head over to our Patreon account that can be found at the bottom of the screen here or in a link form in the description. And you guys can head on over there and find access to startup SFS Dynasty leagues that we're going to be putting on this season for you guys. And if you're interested in getting a extra look at some rookie players, we're going to be doing some film study on there, starting as low as $1 per month, contributing to our channel. So thank you guys so much for all you do, and let's get right into today's mock draft. All right, you guys, we're here on Sleeper Fantasy, and we're ready to get things underway. So starting out with the first overall pick here, I'm going to be choosing, we're going to be going in alternations here. So I'll pick, and then Eric will pick, and then when we come back on the other end of the board for the snake, we'll actually be picking the pairing draft players for the other person's team that they started off. So here at the first overall pick, I'm actually going to go with probably not the consensus first overall pick in Dynasty startups right now. I'm going to go ahead and select Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings here with the 1.1. My reasoning for this is simply I have some question marks about the other top running backs on the board right now. Alvin Kamara, we're not exactly sure who the supporting cast is going to be in 2021. Obviously, no idea who's going to be playing quarterback for that team. And then when you look at some other guys, Christian McCaffrey, the run defenses in his division are just plain and simple a lot more tough than the defenses in the NFC North right now. And then with guys like Saquon Barkley as well, coming off an ACL. So Dalvin Cook for me is the safest top tier 1 running back on the board. So that's why I take him at the 1.1.
I agree with all those things. It's scary that Christian McCaffrey was injured and he keeps getting injured. Same with Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley's injuries weren't even contact injuries, which really scares me. I love them as players, and I think they're some of the best. I think they're even a little more dynamic than Dalvin Cook in some situations.
Yes. They're all elite players, though.
Yes. even more versatile impact to their team. Yeah. Like in some cases, like McCaffrey can literally carry. Dalvin Cook does too, but that passing offense for the Vikings is pretty good. Anyway, I do agree with that. I think Dalvin Cook used to be kind of that injury guy, and he's still a little. He has little tiny things, but for a running back that gets as many carries as he does and is as involved as he is in the offense, he's been pretty healthy as of late.
Right, only missed one game this past season.
Yeah, and his offensive production has been insane. So here, I still do love those other running backs. I think if you do go running back, Christian McCaffrey is probably the guy that you have to go with here. I think he's still going to be great. I think I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey here. My close second is Devontae Adams.
Really?
Yes, because, again, this is are we counting this as a half PPR league?
Yes.
Yeah,
yep.
So a half PPR league, wide receivers are very valuable, especially ones that are getting as many catches as Devontae Adams and as many yards. And, again, he gets touchdowns, too. He was just insane this season. He's still going to have Aaron Rodgers. I think it's someone that should definitely go in tops of drafts. He will be very highly valued compared to years in the past.
Right, 100%. I love the first two picks here going with the top 2 running backs on the board, or at least 2 of the top 3. It depends on your perspective and who you value as that top guy. Back to me here at the 1.3. I'm actually going to make it 3 running backs in a row. And this could change throughout the offseason. We could see Alvin Kamara move back into my number 1 spot, depending on who the quarterback is next season. Or we could see him continue to slip down the board if some things play out that I'm not too big of a fan of. For example, Taysom Hill, he wasn't getting as many receptions. So I am going to go Alvin Kamara here at the 1.3. I love what he does as a receiver. He's had over 80 receptions He had 83, I believe, in his first 3 seasons every single year, and then he was right around that mark here this past year. His touchdowns were great, and he is the best offensive weapon in the NFL, in my opinion. I think, in my opinion, I can't speak for Eric, but it doesn't matter for me, dynasty or redraft. You have to go out there and make those. At least 3 of the top 4 picks, in my opinion, should be that top elite class of running back ones because it is so hard to find those guys. They're few and far between, and if you have the opportunity to get your hands on one of them, you're foolish to not grasp that.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of falling off, like you said. Some of these guys are you're not as confident about them. Again, they're great running backs. They're in decent situations, clearly. With Alvin Kamara, we're not sure. That's why we would take those guys before him. I just think their situations and their health is enough to keep them up there. But Saquon Barkley is another guy that we love, of course. He got hurt, though, and again, those weren't contact injuries. That was just him with a misstep and hurting himself.
Those are the worst to see.
Yeah, and I really like him. I know I may be going against your thoughts here, but I got to go with Davante Adams.
I can't fault you for Adams at 4. I think that's solid.
That's about where his ADP is at, too. That I imagine that's right about where it's going to be. Yep, so 5, and I think he just adds so much value to a team because, 1, he meets his floor, and 2, he meets his ceiling. He at every stat level, he is number 1 in fantasy football. I think, and he's young. These are all guys, partly why they're picked this high is because their age and how they're in their prime right now, and you're gonna get the most fantasy value out of them, especially Davante Adams, and he's got Aaron Rodgers still there. So I think Davante Adams is definitely a safe pick if you're in the top 5 for sure.
Right, 100%. I agree with everything you just said there. I think Davante at the 1.4, you really can't go wrong. This is an extremely safe pick. And what puts these established players at the very top of the board above some of these other really elite prospects that we see is that they've already hit their peaks. They're already in stride. And you don't have to do so much projections with these players because you know what you're going to get barring injury. So there's some other guys on this list who I think are great prospects. They could be even better than these guys potentially, but you know that you have the element of safety here with these first 4 guys on the board. Here at the 1.5, I've got myself a little bit of an internal debate. Do I go Saquon Barkley, risk it a little bit? Do I go Jonathan Taylor, who I think is a bit of a safer option, better offensive line? He's younger, hasn't had the injuries to this point in his career. But then if you take a look at the wide receiver side of things, we've got Tyreek Hill right up there as well. So I think what I'm going to do here with this 5th overall pick is I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I think that it's a little bit hard to go against him at the spot we're at here on the board. I think personally, if this was my own fantasy league and I had money on the line, I would probably take the safer option of going Jonathan Taylor here.
That's who I'm probably going to go here.
I think personally I like to play things safe and go with what I know I can expect, and a guy coming off an ACL injury is a bit intimidating for such a high investment here at the 1.5. But for the sake of this mock draft, we'll go ahead with Saquon at the 5th overall pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor with my pick here at number 6. Jonathan Taylor has shown us that he can be a bell cow, and then he can also catch. This is a half PPR league that we're drafting for. He would add great value, and of course he was only a rookie this year, so he's got lots of time. Like you said, he's got a good O-line. I think the Colts are going to continue to be a strong team. They've got lots of cap. I think Frank Reich is a great coach, and I think that it's going to be a really good situation for Jonathan Taylor. I think that the running back situation on teams is a little frantic right now, and he's one of the players that you can be confident in, even with some of those other guys. Naheem Hines is there. He may be a free agent.
Not. Marlon Mack is, though.
But Marlon Mack, I don't expect them to bring him back.
It'd be a waste of cap.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what happens to him, but I think you got to go Jonathan Taylor here. He's a very safe pick, like you said. He meets his floor, and I think that as he becomes even more, he gets basically every carry in a game. Right. He's getting all those catches. He's going to be a ceiling guy too. So I really like Jonathan Taylor here.
100%. the things I love, just to piggyback on top of that, is JT, he didn't start the first game of the season. He kind of had to take over unexpectedly because Marlon Mack got hurt so quickly.
Yeah.
And he to be honest, he struggled. He was not great through the first half of the season, but when we saw him hit his stride, he got comfortable and really started understanding what was going on with that offense. He blossomed and looks like a top 5 running back every single week. And I think an underrated element of his fantasy value that not too many people talk about is he plays in that AFC South where he's got the Jags defense to feast on twice a year. Tennessee's defense is nothing too hot right now. And the Texans are a dumpster fire.
The almighty defense for offensive fantasy players.
Right. So he's got a perfect situation. Like, I would also argue the NFC North is pretty darn good as well. I love JT there at the 1.6. Right after that, here with the 7th overall selection, I'm debating right now between Nick Chubb and Tyreek Hill. I think Nick Chubb really, he is not quite in that top 3 Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara range, but he is the last guy I see in that Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor tier. So I think I'm actually, though, going to go with Tyreek Hill here. I think that he's in the class with Adams at the top for wideouts, tied to Patrick Mahomes. A great situation with Coach Andy Reid. I know they struggled in the Super Bowl, but Tyreek Hill, very under the radar. That team's going to come back strong next year, and he's youthful as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill is always going to get points. It's the Chiefs. He's got Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be throwing deep. Even if he gets like 2 catches in a game, he's going to have at least 50 or more yards.
Yes, it could be 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And it's amazing. And it only takes like 1 quarter for him to get his full week, or his full week of fantasy points, his 1 game. But I really, I don't love him personally as a player, but in fantasy, he's great. You see the numbers, and it's nice. Here, I think it's starting to. I don't love the wide receivers taking in the first round. I really do love Justin Jefferson, but I don't know if this is the spot where you take him. You might want to a little early. You might want to take a more established player at this point. I know clearly he's very young, but
he does have Thielen working against him.
He does. Targets, it's not a perfect situation. We still got Nick Chubb up there. I really do love Nick Chubb. Again, he's got Kareem Hunt there, but it doesn't even matter. It is just crazy. But I think I'm gonna go Chubb here. He's very consistent again, and even with the competition and them being like the best running back duo, him and Hunt, it's still very impressive numbers from him. His running style is very nice. And he catches occasionally too, and the Browns' offense has been very impressive this year. And I'm expecting it with Stefanski for the Browns to actually be a legitimate team for the next few years. So I think Nick Chubb is a safe play here, just like Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I knocked Nick Chubb last season. I wasn't in love with picking Nick Chubb early. I compared him to Josh Jacobs. I said that the ADP difference was too much for me to go in on Nick Chubb. And then watching this past season unfold, where I was wrong was that Nick Chubb, yes, he doesn't get the receptions like Josh Jacobs doesn't either. And so that was kind of my knock that's going to bring down his ceiling. But then Nick Chubb hits these home run hitter 50-yard rushing touchdowns, and he just explodes through holes and makes something out of nothing.
Yeah.
He is very explosive in the open field. He's dangerous. That's something we don't see Josh Jacobs do, which is something that's going to have him fading down my boards this season because he didn't have an explosive play, a rush of 20 or more yards until week 14.
And that's where he got most of his fantasy points. It was kind of inflated because he had occasional games where he had a lot of points, and some people were almost like, wow, Josh Jacobs is great. Yeah, Josh Jacobs is great in fantasy, but really, if you're playing half PPR or PPR, he's someone that was getting drafted far too high. So we're going to fade him again.
But nonetheless, here at the 1.9, I've got some options here. The class of running backs that I love is starting to dwindle out here. I'm not quite as high on Derrick Henry as I was last offseason. The seasons are kind of racking up with all those touches. He had a ton of explosive carries last year, but honestly, his team situation is actually causing him to fall down my draft board personally. I see that defense getting more and more sparse with talent. I see that they're trailing a lot more games and having control of the lead and possession of the football for less time. So that's kind of scaring me away from him. And then I look at some of these receivers, though, that I've got on the board. DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. I really like the youth that these guys present to me. These are guys in either their second or third year in the NFL and are very, very solid talents. So at the 1.9, this might seem like a bit of a reach, but I'm actually going to go out and I'm going to go get DK Metcalf. I think that him and Russell Wilson are going to continue to develop as a pair. I know there's some Russell Wilson trade talk going around right now, but I'm not buying that Seattle is going to give up their entire franchise because, frankly, the Seahawks wouldn't be in contention without him. I think those two are going to hook up for a lot of more touchdowns this season and probably even see some more targets and receptions. So I think as the years go on, we're going to see more and more DK Metcalf, less and less Tyler Lockett. But for now, he's still a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Another guy that went to the same school, A.J. Brown, he's another really young receiver that is very talented and puts up some really good numbers for such a young receiver. Like, these are the guys that are going to be the generational talent that we're going to, everyone's going to know their name for a long time. I mean, everyone loves DK Metcalf. He's like, all the little kids love him. He's like the Fortnite of the NFL. Like all the people know DK Metcalf, the giant receiver for the Seahawks. But I think it's still a little early for Justin Jefferson. I really do love him. Yeah. He's a very solid player. Here, I think you still got to go with Derrick Henry. I know he's getting older, but the man rushed for 2,000 yards. Right. I think he drops to 10 here. I think that's appropriate. The guy had over 2,000 rushing yards. He's got to go in the first round. I know, yes. I think that it's fair to let him. I think it's fair to let him slide down the list. Again, this is a half PPR draft, so he's not getting any catches, basically. No, not really. But when he's rushing for that many yards, it's fair to have him in the first round when he's gonna be still the centerpiece of the offense.
Yeah, so here at the 111, I'm looking at some options I've got on the board. I'm considering Stephon Diggs. You've got yourself another great wide receiver 1. He's been around a little bit longer than some of those other guys, but an elite level talent with Josh Allen. It's a match made in heaven. Those two work perfectly together with that deep ball ability of Diggs to run those routes and then Josh Allen's cannon for an arm to deliver those footballs. And then I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes already. I think when you look at a guy who's really a safe prospect to be a top 3 guy at his position every single year for 5+ seasons, Pat Mahomes, his name sounds great right here. I think for the sake of Stephon Diggs is still on the board, I'm going to go with him here at the 111, but it's a very, very close call between him and Pat Mahomes, and I think that if I could get my hands on Mahomes at this spot, I would also be happy going that route.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really love Stephon Diggs. I really love Josh Allen. If we were doing a startup, I would definitely be a guy who was going after Josh Allen and probably Stephon Diggs and put them together. They're one of the wide receiver quarterback duos that I really like. Yeah, along with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. This year, if you had that combo, you were in really good shape. So, and even Stephon Diggs, you could have ended up with all of them. So that's a really, really nice team. Here at number 12, there's still Justin Jefferson on the board, like I said. Derrick Henry's off. We got DeAndre Hopkins, of course. He's getting a little older, but he's still a very fantastic receiver. I think him and Devontae Adams are two of the best. I don't know who I would say is better at this point, but I think I'm going to probably go with Patrick Mahomes here at number 12. He is, again, one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen, to be honest. He makes amazing plays, and I don't think it would be a professional video here if, just like all the analysts, they always have Patrick Mahomes in the first round. But it's fair. It's really fair because Patrick Mahomes is amazing, and he meets the floor and he meets the ceiling. So after that, you're going to need to get another skill position here, a running back or a receiver. I think that this team could afford to go with a guy like A.J. Brown or Justin Jefferson. I think at this point, running back is a little more, you're kind of digging in for one of those guys that could be a top 10 running back that you may not expect to be a top 10 running back. A guy like Miles Sanders who could break out. A guy like J.K. Dobbins that could break out. But
Cam Akers is on the board still.
Cam
Aaron
Akers.
Jones is around, although we don't know where he's going to land
I think here I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. I think that since Corey Davis is also a free agent, I think A.J. Brown will become even more of the main guy in Tennessee. Again, they're not in a great situation on that team, but he is a very good receiver. He meets his ceiling, which is fantastic, and his numbers were pretty dang good this season. I just hope he can stay healthy and that team can keep using him the right way.
Yeah, quick note here before I get into the 2.2 pick. If you guys are enjoying today's video, go down right now, hit the subscribe button, turn the bell on so you guys are notified whenever we come out with a new video.
It's free.
It's free. It means a lot to us. We'd love if you'd head over to the Patreon as well and check us out there for some more exclusive content. But here with the 2.2 selection, I've got a choice here. So I've got Stephon Diggs was the first player I took for this team. And so now I've got the decision of who do I want to pair with Mr. Diggs. And I think here, having a star wide receiver, it's important to especially consider your running back options here. Like I talked about just a second ago, Aaron Jones is on the board. He is technically the most established player. However, we don't know where he's going to be this season. I think with my pick of running backs, I've got Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift are all my top four to select from here. I'm going to pick the guy I project as having the best potential to not only see a bunch of volume, but also be highly effective with those carries. I'm going to go with Cam Akers here. I think this might surprise some people, but Cam Akers down the stretch, he was a fantasy team MVP. He won some teams their leagues because of what he did for them in the postseason. He kind of went crazy. He did get banged up a couple times this season and missed time, but when he was on the field, he was great. So it's probably a smart move to go out and get Darrell Henderson his handcuff because of those injury risks that we've seen. But even in the NFL postseason, Cam Akers was great. He carried that team to wins. And with Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, a new quarterback, I think that passing game is going to be more effective. That's going to bring the safeties back up out of the box and open up run lanes for Akers.
So for my pick at the 2.3, they already picked Derrick Henry. And I've been talking about him this whole time. I think they go Justin Jefferson here.
Yeah.
He's got
Great
the
pick.
age that I like. Otherwise, I would have taken DeAndre Hopkins. But I think if you are starting up a team, you already have a little bit of, I guess, some stability issues with Derrick Henry. We don't know how much longer he's going to last.
Yeah.
So if you go Justin Jefferson here, you'll have that age that's safe, and he could be a top 10 wide receiver for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the fact that he played alongside Adam Thielen this season, he outpaced him in targets, he outpaced him in receptions. The only thing he didn't quite get him on was touchdowns. Adam Thielen had 14 touchdowns to inflate
the trash
those
time
numbers.
touchdowns.
Adam Thielen is going to plummet down draft boards. One of the things that we really want to focus our time and effort for this coming season, and in our draft guide that's going to be going up on our website when we get that launched here, hopefully sometime soon within the next month or so. We really want to project those players that you want to stay away from because they had inflated touchdown numbers in 2020 and are going to expect a healthy decline from those guys. And then we want to take a look at some guys that underachieved in the touchdown area of production and could potentially see their numbers shoot back up this year. And just some other guys, sleepers like Stephon Diggs, who move teams, fall into a great situation, and might become home run hits in those middle rounds.
Lots of free agent receivers to watch out for.
Yes,
so
Will
we'll
Fuller
let you know.
could be something big. Allen Robinson could go to a new team. You never know.
I hope not.
Chris
but
Godwin
I
might
think
be on the move. I think it'd be best for Chris Godwin's fantasy situation if he left Tampa. Not because I don't believe in Tom Brady, but I think that Tom just spreads the ball out so much that we really saw. I expected Chris Godwin to just be a target hog, and Mike Evans and Gronk were. And
Cameron Brate was in there a lot.
who is that Hudson guy he threw in the end zone in the Super Bowl?
It's crazy.
Tom doesn't care what your number is, what your name is. He's going to throw you the ball if you're open. He's going to make the right read. So a little bit off track here. But DK Metcalf is our first guy we've got for this football team. Like I said, if you've got that receiver, you want to look at running back before the crop gets too thin, because if you think about it like this, in a Dynasty startup draft, age is valued a lot more in these drafts than maybe establishment is for some people and at some spots in the draft. You've got your running backs, and those young guys are going to fly off the board quick because of positional scarcity, and just the difficulty it is to find one of those guys later on. So I think it's critical that this team right here finds a running back. My options, J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, or DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
This is a tough one for me. I'm not really sure where I want to go. I could go Miles Sanders as well, but I think with a player like DK Metcalf, his ceiling is very high, but we don't see him get double-digit receptions that often.
Yeah.
So I think it's safe, or it's important to go with the safest floor running back. And as much as I bashed on Josh Jacobs earlier, he's going to get the touches, and he's going to get the high workload in John Gruden's offense.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best situational player to pair with DK for that team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Here I am at the 2.5, and Nick Chubb was already chosen. So if we follow our formula, I have to take a receiver here, or at least I should. This isn't always going to be the case. If someone falls that you really that is, their ADP is really high and everyone just avoided them for some reason. Maybe you live in Chicago and all the Packers are falling. But anyway, if a guy falls, you can take him. But here, Aaron Jones is still there.
He is.
And clearly this is early. This is an early Dynasty startup. But
right. Things are going to change, you guys. Yeah. If you look back on this mock draft in 2 months, you're probably going to think we're the biggest dorks in the world, because you're going to see guys that have question marks right now that we figure out what's going on later, and that changes everything.
A guy that is getting a little older but is just a total monster in fantasy is Travis Kelce. He meets his floor and he meets his ceiling. I mean, you saw him in the Super Bowl, even when the Chiefs were just a total struggle bus. He had like 150 receiving yards. I think. Yeah, just
and he dropped
insane.
Two big plays that he should have caught.
Yeah, here I'm going to take Travis Kelce. You put him with a guy like Nick Chubb, and that team is going to be very consistent. So then you can take some more risks later on in the draft.
I messed that up. I put him with the other team.
There we go. Yeah.
I actually
put the Chiefs together there.
I actually love that selection, Eric, and I think that works great for both Dynasty and Redraft. We've talked about Travis Kelce in the couple of mocks that we've done this offseason, and just the versatility that he gives you. If you're picking at the back end of the first round in a redraft league next year, if you can go out and get yourself a safe RB1, he's not going to be one of the top tier guys, but then pick Travis Kelce with that next turnaround pick. You're going to have the flexibility of having a dependable RB1, which is the hardest position to find in fantasy football. And, well, honestly, tight end might be even harder to find a guy in the stratosphere of Kelce. So if we want to get into, I actually want to talk about this before you pick Travis Kelce, which I think is a fascinating selection. I think works perfectly for that team. Some fantasy philosophy here. So we love getting those running backs that are established and can be dependable in the first round. But we want to teach you guys, or at least inform you, how to be extremely cautious with not reaching. And I think one of the messages that a lot of fantasy channels or just fantasy content creators push out there is running back early, running back early, running back early. And I think that gets a lot of people into a hole of picking running back round after round after round. And here at SFS, what we believe is you got to hit running back once, at least once in the first 2 rounds. You have to be able to lock up that consistent running back one starter. And let's say you get a guy like a Nick Chubb, or you get your Derrick Henry, and you want to double up in the second round, that's fine. We do believe if you pick a wide receiver in the first round, you have to address the running back position in the second round. Because if you're familiar with the RB0 strategy where you just wait and pick some flyers, that doesn't work. It's a very hard strategy to pull off. So we just want you guys to be cautious. Don't go 3 in a row with running back. You're limiting your ceiling too much at that point. You need to diversify the positions you're investing into. But early on, it's critical. You really can't necessarily win your fantasy league in your first couple rounds, but you can certainly lose it if you make the wrong choices. So
I definitely agree with that.
At the 2-6 here, let's follow our thing here, follow our fantasy philosophy. We've got our wide receiver on our team. So I don't want to wait till it comes back to me at 3-7. I need to address the running back position now. And I think if I wait, it's going to be too late, and I'm going to miss out on really the guys that you want.
That are going to start even.
Right. You're going to be looking at guys in committees or that have a lot of question marks, and that can just be a headache and a nightmare. So I've got J.K. Dobbins. I've got Miles Sanders. I've got Ezekiel Elliott.
I mean, even David Montgomery should be considered.
He could.
The issue with the Bears is that the O-line is not completely trustworthy, and the quarterback situation is not trustworthy. But David Montgomery is a great talent, so he's a guy that is going to start. We know he is, but Tariq Cohen's going to be most likely back, so we'll see.
Chicago sports fan over here, if you guys were wondering.
Got my Cubs jersey on, my Anthony Rizzo jersey, if you're a baseball fan. So
I think where I'm actually going to go with this pick, I was actually thinking I was going to pick Swift, but I think I'm going to go Dobbins here.
Okay.
And my explanation for that is J.K. Dobbins, I think, should have been the first running back taken in last year's draft, the actual NFL draft we're talking here. I think his explosion in the open field is great. He's extremely dynamic, and he can do whatever you ask him to do. With Mark Ingram out the door, I see the opportunity opening. The door is wide open for J.K. Dobbins to be a running back one in fantasy, and even have a massive ceiling because of that burst I talked about. And when you've got linebackers and safeties watching Lamar Jackson, it's going to give some freebie plays. Let's be honest. He's going to get 20 yards a few times because people simply aren't even looking at him.
Yeah.
So I go J.K. Dobbins here. I think the upside is great. Pair him with Tyreek Hill. Your team's going to have a monster ceiling.
We took a running back here, Jonathan Taylor, very consistent player. That gives us some opportunity to get a little risky, but I don't know.
Lots of flexibility.
Yeah, I don't know if Calvin Ridley is even that risky, but he is a very, very good player, and he's on a team that
still got
passes
Hopkins
the ball.
on the board too.
Have we not taken DeAndre Hopkins? Oh my goodness, we might just have to go DeAndre Hopkins here. So yeah, DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley. The thing with Calvin Ridley is that he's much younger than Hopkins. But if you've got a young guy like Jonathan Taylor... You
might think so. The age gap, I don't think, between the two is as drastic as it seems. D-Hop's going to be going into his age 29 season. I believe, off the top of my head, if I'm not mistaken, I think Calvin Ridley is about 27. He was an old rookie. He came in about 23 and a half out of Alabama. He's 26 right now, so he'll be 27.
Yeah.
So about 2 years.
Yeah, so we'll see. But, DeAndre Hopkins, you got to go here. Again, he's one of the best receivers in the league. Kyler Murray had that little injury that might have hurt him a little bit, and again, he plays against Jalen Ramsey twice a year, but he is, again, one of the best. DeAndre Hopkins, everyone loves him. He's great.
He is great. He was the quiet guy for a while, but once he got out of Houston, he kind of badmouthed them at times a little bit, but still not a diva by any stretch of the imagination. I love D-Hop. He's a route-running wide receiver, which gives me faith that he can be effective for at least 2 to 3 more years at a high level. We're seeing Julio Jones right now. He's missing time in games, but when he's on the field as a physically dominating player, he is still Julio Jones, maybe not quite at the peak of his performance, but still a very good player in those 12, 13 games you do get out of him per season. 1.5 here, Saquon Barkley. I think this is a really interesting selection for me. This could make or break this team in particular because we don't know exactly how Saquon is going to come back out of that injury. And taking a look at the running back position, I could make a huge mistake here, or I could potentially save my team if Saquon just becomes one of those injury guys. And so I'm actually going to double up at running back here. I think that there are better options at wide receiver. But for this team in particular, taking the risk on Barkley, you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you pick Barkley early and then you don't address running back for a while and it turns into a disaster later where you're scrambling to find RB pieces if something were to go south. This gives you some extra insurance. It gives you a little bit more safety. And then you can go and try and project some of those guys later on in the draft to turn out and be big hits. So if we're looking at the board here, DeAndre Swift, a really dynamic player, half PPR league. I think he's great out of the backfield, and that could be awesome. Otherwise, I like Miles Sanders here. I think this is tough. I've got Zeke on the board as well. We don't know exactly how Philly's going to look next year. We assume that Wentz is going to be gone, but I think I'm going to pair the former Penn State teammates together. I'm going to go Miles Sanders here in the back end of the second round.
I love Miles Sanders. We both love him. The situation wasn't great for him.
He's back.
Such a talented running back, but it just wasn't a good situation. I'm hoping that it can improve now that the Dougie's gone, but and the quarterback situation is soon to change, and I'm just curious what it's going to be. I'm hoping that. Well, it's going to be Hurts most likely.
Yeah, I think that's
gone.
best for him. We saw Miles kind of pop when Hurts came in because the offense became more efficient.
Yeah.
On Patreon, I came out with a video a few days ago. I just ranted about talking about situation and how that impacts fantasy and honestly overtakes talent sometimes. And Miles Sanders was my example 1A of a 5-star recruit, absolutely ridiculously talented player. And the toxicity of the team and the turnovers and the culture just derailed his season, and it was a nightmare.
And that whole line is just not good.
That's an issue too.
So Devontae Adams was taken here, so running back is a need. We still got Aaron Jones. Again, we don't know exactly where he's going to be. Zeke is still very interesting to me. Yeah. DeAndre Swift is also someone that we think is almost going to be like how we thought Miles Sanders is going to be. He's going to get the ball a lot in the air, and he's going to get a lot of carries. It's the Lions. Their line isn't that bad.
That's the one thing that worries me is it's the Lions, and they have Goff.
Yes, with Goff, but their O-line isn't that bad. But the problem is that their defense is just gonna really kill their offense.
At least he has the ability to be a receiver.
Yeah, so he may be part of that 2-minute drill where somehow they're staying in the game and he's getting the ball the whole time. But I really do like DeAndre Swift, but I think
he'd be great with Brady.
Yeah, I know. I think it's disrespect to not take Elliott in the second round. Zeke is still a very good running back. I think that people were a little too sour on him this season when he did have Dak, who was fantastic. We are big Dak fans.
Yes.
You should not hate on Dak. He
At least,
was
especially not in fantasy. If you want to do it in the actual NFL as a franchise quarterback, I will still disagree with you. But in terms of fantasy, you can't argue it.
No.
He's got too many weapons, too many passes.
That team should be so much better than they are, but I think Zeke here, he's going to have Dak back. We don't know exactly how he's going to be, but I still think he's going to be a cannon. Yeah. He's going to be able to open up that offense more than Andy Dalton or whatever that guy's name was.
Ben DiNucci.
DiNucci, yeah. But I still think Zeke might fall down boards and give some really good values to teams. And he's still one of the younger players. He's
decent.
Yeah.
He's still middle,
and I think he's
going
to play for a while.
Yeah, I think everything you said there makes perfect sense. He absolutely will slip down boards, I expect, this season. And it's fair. It's warranted. He has his question marks. But at the same time, I feel almost this like safety blanket just knowing what Zeke has been.
We know what Zeke can do.
When you look at the first 5-game sample of his season this past year, he was a top 5 running back producer in the half PPR scoring format. And he was catching a lot more passes this season.
And
from
their
Dak
line was more healthy at that point, too.
It was.
So we're hoping that their line can be a little
shape
stronger.
Up, maybe insert some draft picks into that line, get guys healthy, and all that should be a major help here. Yep. So these guys right here, we've got our 3 picks with those top tier of running backs. These are extremely flexible positions here where we can kind of take some risks if we'd like to.
You really want that top 3. It's very
play
nice.
It really safe. Yeah, this sets you up to be successful immediately. If you don't mess up the rest of your draft, you're going to be a competitor year one. We've seen it in almost all of our leagues, besides when Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, of course.
Yeah.
So I could go and reach maybe and get a top flight tight end in George Kittle or Darren Waller. I could turn around, Calvin Ridley still on the board here. Yeah. I also see Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, or I could play it safe and go, an Austin Eckler, a guy who plays in a solid offense with a new young quarterback. Justin Herbert looked exceptional this past season. So I think another guy I like is Antonio Gibson of the Washington football team. He's pretty darn dynamic. He did excellent, and he was one of the first rookie running backs to break out and pop this season. Big surprise. I projected him to be good, but I didn't expect it so soon. So looking here, I think with Alvin Kamara, I've already got such high upside at the running back position. I love DeAndre Swift, though. There's so many options. I'm stuck between Ridley and DeAndre Swift right now, if I'm being honest. I think Aaron Jones, I know, is still there. I have no idea where Aaron Jones is going to land, and I feel like it's unlikely the Packers re-sign him, and if they don't, I couldn't tell you where he's going to go. Maybe Miami could be a suitor. But
that's what I picture in my head, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift here. You've got yourself 2 high upside dynamic running backs, 2 guys that can go out and win your week by themselves. And I think that pairing that high upside with the safety of Kamara, it's worth it.
Like you said, it's fair to go with 2 running backs. We really like DeAndre Swift. I think in some drafts he's going to drop to the 3rd round because it's first off it's the Lions.
I'd be shocked in Dynasty if he fell to the 3rd, but absolutely third and 4th for redraft purposes. He's going to be on the table.
But I really think he's going to be a really good fantasy running back this coming year, I should say. But Christian McCaffrey was taken. Clearly, again, all these guys are very safe. I think Calvin Ridley is a safe play here, or Terry McLaurin. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be very consistent, and Terry McLaurin too. McCaffrey also has that ceiling.
He's McLaurin's a one-man band there, and
if they address some quarterback there, and I'd like to see them draft one of those good running backs or quarterbacks in the top, but I'm curious.
Those of you guys at home, if you are not a Washington football team fan, and let us know, had you ever, I should say, heard Logan Thomas's name? Let us know in the comment section. If you had ever heard his name prior to this season, the guy's almost 30 years old and popped up out of nowhere, saw 110 targets this season. Logan Thomas was being used like a wide receiver one for some teams. The guy he's not it. I mean, he was making plays, but such a late bloomer for fantasy purposes. Their offense is a disaster. They're not very talented.
I think that I'm going to go Calvin Ridley here. I just think he's the best wide receiver available.
Fair enough. That's very safe. Yep.
I think that's a good decision there, and I'd really like to see the Falcons pick a quarterback like Zach Wilson to sit behind Matt Ryan and develop, and then Calvin Ridley will have...
You could find yourself with Ridley taking over for Julio if they move off of him.
Exactly. So he could be one of those main guys, one of those quarterback wide receiver combos, and I'd really like to see them get Zach Wilson and a guy that could distribute the ball to Calvin Ridley really well.
Yeah, Ridley this season with Julio on the field finished as a top 5 wide receiver. So tremendous upside. He's one of the most talented. He's a great route runner, very explosive.
We really like those route runners.
So here at the 212, so I picked Dalvin Cook first overall to kick off this mock draft, and I've got back-to-back picks here for this football team. I've got my running back 1 position taken. It's pretty safe. I know that Dalvin Cook, I know what he's going to be. Obviously, investing the first overall pick into this guy, I think I want to try and target Alexander Mattison. Maybe not reach too early on him, but make a valiant effort to get him on my team at some point. Obviously, far too early to do that now. I just want to address that. I think it's very fair. I could either go with another running back. I can really do whatever I want to be with this pick. I can go out and get a quarterback. I can go out and get the best receiver or a tight end. And that's actually what I'm going to do with this first pick. I'm going to head over. I'm going to take Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. When I look at the tight end position, I think that a lot of people undervalue Travis Kelce. They undervalue Darren Waller. And I think that people overvalue George Kittle. And for the simple fact that he gets hurt a lot and he doesn't see the end zone too many times, although he does probably rack up the most yards of them besides Kelce. Yeah. So all-around best tight end, I'd say, is Kittle. But that's besides the point. This is for fantasy purposes here. I'm going to go out and get the best tight end on the board for me, and I'm going to get a guy who I know week in and week out I can depend on at that position.
Yeah, and again, he's not too old. I mean, he's going to be around the Raiders franchise for a little bit longer. He's a great talent. He's basically a receiver. He's so fast. He catches everything. He gets those yards and he gets touchdowns. Some games he basically dominates the defense. It's impossible for defenses to cover him. Here they're going to be picking again. This is the 3-1. We still got Terry McLaurin up there. This could be
the best receiver.
Yep, that, or we get some running back depth.
Heck, you can even go for one of the top quarterbacks.
Josh Allen. Quarterback here would be fair, as well as Austin Eckler still being up there, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas. I think that quarterback is definitely something that would be respectable here. Josh Allen is really a guy I love. But it may also be receiver time. You never really know. I think what you could do with this team is Terry McLaurin. We don't know where Allen Robinson's going to go. Terry is just a little sketchy because of the quarterback situation, but
he's prevailed
Washington.
Through it.
I think Washington's going to figure something out. I think they are moving in the right direction in some ways. So I think Terry McLaurin for this team. You pair him, Darren Waller, and then Dalvin Cook, clearly our number one running back. I think that's a fair choice if you go with Terry.
Yeah, I like the pick. I love Terry McLaurin. Michael Thomas, we're going to pick him here in the first 3 rounds. Do not worry, but I think there's some major concerns with his potential quarterback situation next season that makes him fade down the board, along with age. I like where you went with Terry McLaurin. I agree with the pick. I think that maybe going quarterback could have given us some more flexibility as well, because I think wide receiver, or at least the stats have shown wide receiver is the deepest position in fantasy. We might not necessarily get a superstar later on, but we could have went with a superstar running back, tight end, and quarterback with this team. You never know. It all depends on your draft strategy. I think this works out perfect, and we're still going to get a quarterback who is a very deep position as well. That can round this team out later on.
That could be one of those teams that takes a young quarterback like Trevor Lawrence and almost predicts that he's going to be very good. It's just like Joe Burrow last year.
Right.
While he was a decent fantasy QB.
Right, absolutely. So here with CMC, Calvin Ridley here with the 3-2. I've already got my RB1. I've got my wide receiver 1. I've got 2 very dependable guys. I can count on these players week in and week out. And I think you've got yourself, like we've said, we've set these teams up for success. We haven't made it in a spot where none of these teams are in a position where they have to pick a certain position in a coming round. Like, we didn't just dive in running back, other than one team. And that kind of forces you to move away from the running back position, but the door is wide open for anyone else for any of these other rosters. So I think I'm actually going to go in here, and I'm going to pick Austin Eckler. I think that pairing him with Christian McCaffrey in a PPR format, half PPR rather, it just gives this team a lot of opportunity for high upside and
that
ceiling.
Could be a super team. Because there's some of the risk there with Eckler we don't really know. If he is going to stay healthy, 1, and 2, if he's going to be the main man. We really like Eckler. He's great in fantasy, again, because of that catching, but we don't have that complete safety there. So if you have Christian McCaffrey and Calvin Ridley already, Austin Eckler is definitely a guy to consider. So I really 100%. Like that pick. So here at the 3-3, we've already taken our 2 running backs. Here we probably want to get a wide receiver. Some guys that are on the board: Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen. CeeDee Lamb is even someone to consider. And then we got some of those rookies down there that are really interesting, and I really like them, but we don't clearly know where they're going to go, so that is kind of a factor. But I think Michael Thomas is a fair pick here. We don't know what they're going to do with QB on the Saints, like you said, with Alvin Kamara. Clearly we have Kamara on this team already. But I think, since, like you said, wide receiver is a little more deep, and this is a team that has one of those top running backs, you can afford to go a little bit more risky at receiver and maybe go a little more a deep dive in those young players and take some risks. So
100%.
If you have the top 3 picks, you get those strong picks in the beginning, and then you can take a little more risk, and that can make it so easy to walk into the playoffs in a fantasy league.
100%. You got to set yourself up for success early on. Otherwise, you'll find yourself scrambling at the back end of the draft, and things can get a little bit ugly for your team. So we've got Devontae and Zeke here with this next team. Obviously, Devontae Adams, he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver year in and year out while he's still playing at this level. Ezekiel Elliott, we assume, will be somewhere in that RB. I'd say he'd be between RB7 and RB14. It's a healthy range for how I would project him to finish, depending on how many games he plays and how many attempts he gets. So I think we've got ourselves a safe running back. I think it would be nice to pick up an RB2 here just to try and increase the ceiling value at that running back position. But I also think going with another receiver could increase your floor without really setting your team up in too much of a sticky spot. But where I actually think I'm going to go with this team, because I know I can come back rounds 5, 6, and get a stud receiver that can put up really nice numbers alongside Adams, as I'm actually going to bolster my upside at the quarterback position. And I'm going to do that with Kyler Murray. And for me, Kyler Murray, he's not necessarily the best pure passer, although I think he does have a great deep ball. He has great touch and accuracy. This guy runs like crazy. He is not quite Lamar Jackson in the terms of how much he runs, but he runs enough where he gets very, very good fantasy value out of it, and he also produces much more through the air, which I really like as well.
Yeah, I really love Kyler Murray overall as a fantasy QB because he does a lot more throwing than Lamar does, but he also kind of edges towards his kind of running. Clearly, Lamar had like 1,000 rushing yards, and Kyler did not have as many, but again, that's going to help his fantasy value. Even if he has a bad game, he might have some rushing yards and a rushing touchdown.
He had over 10 rushing touchdowns this season. I think he had 11, 37 total touchdowns.
Yep, and he tied Cam Newton, I believe, for rushing touchdowns.
Might have been.
Yep, so again, that's very good because Cam Newton barely threw for anything, and Kyler Murray threw pretty well, especially with an injury. So there, I really like that pick. He's a very, very solid fantasy QB. And if anything, Josh Allen is one of those guys as well. But here, I think you have to go receiver since we took those two. Allen Robinson, again, he's getting a little older is one thing, and then he's going to go to another team most likely. I'd love to see him stay with the Bears, but I don't think he's going to. And then if he does stay with the Bears, we don't know what the QB situation is going to be. Keenan Allen is a guy I really like for this.
Yes.
We have a little bit of risk with Miles Sanders, but Keenan Allen's going to be really nice with Justin Herbert. He's going to be turning 29 this season, it seems, his coming season, which isn't too bad.
Especially for a route runner.
Yeah. He's going to be playing for a long time, I think, even into his mid-30s. I just see it.
He could be one of those guys. 100%.
I think you just look at him, you can tell this guy's going to play for a long time. But yeah, I think Keenan Allen, he's got that big old man beard. But yeah, I think Keenan Allen is a very safe pick here, and I think that he's an undervalued receiver in fantasy football. But with Justin Herbert throwing to him, you know he's going to get those numbers. So yeah, Keenan Allen here, I think it's a very safe pick for this team.
I love the Keenan Allen pick. I was actually thinking about him with my choice coming up here, so I definitely like where you went with that pick. I think he's a great safe player, and he actually led the NFL in targets until he ended up getting injured. So obviously a great safe choice. This 1.6 team, I love how this is looking. Here at the 3.6, you've got such a safe option, top 5 guy in Jonathan Taylor. DeAndre Hopkins, for the next 2 seasons, you're going to get premier wide receiver 1 production out of him. So that gives us a great opening for the rest of this team to just kind of look around and see what do I have available. And I think as the running back crop kind of thins out here, I like entertaining the idea of an Aaron Jones. And I think that he's fallen too far to this point to not take a chance on his ceiling, because even as a member of the Green Bay Packers, he was still in a committee-style offense. He still finished as an RB1, and he missed some time. So I think that tells us Aaron Jones, even if he goes somewhere next year and he's not the full-on workhorse, his explosion, his ability as a receiver, and he is used on the goal line. He's going to maintain fantasy relevancy. And for at least the next year or so, I think he will be a fantasy relevant player.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is a great talent, and it really sucks that he's not getting that lead role for a team. Even for the Packers, it was technically a committee. They would just rotate a guy for a whole drive, and Aaron Jones wouldn't be seen. But when he would be out there, he looked very, very nice. Here we took Tyreek Hill, J.K. Dobbins. I really like that because you got that a lot of safety with Tyreek Hill, and J.K. Dobbins is going to get a lot of carries, even if it is Gus Bus there with him, because that team just runs so much. Here you do have some breathing room. It might even be the time to take a guy like Josh Allen. Otherwise, you could bolster that running back room on a team like this. I mean, Josh Allen's only 24. He's going to be around for a long time. I can just see it. Him and Diggs are going to be together for at least another 4 or 5 years.
I would assume, yeah.
Yep. So I think they're going to be a powerhouse. But anyway, Josh Allen is definitely a thought, but we could also go receiver here. Again, Allen Robinson is still sitting there. And then receiver kind of turns into, I mean, we got Chris Godwin as well, but he's also someone we don't know where he's going to be. But the Bucs are pretty dead set on keeping him. So I think I go Chris Godwin here. He's, again, very safe pick. He's going to get a lot of catches wherever he goes, and he's going to catch the ball. Chris Godwin is a very great route runner and a very good catcher. He's just a very rounded receiver. So I think that's a safe pick in the third round.
Yeah, I like that pick, Chris Godwin. I think we've seen his ceiling come down from the Jameis Winston days, but the floor is still nice. He finds the end zone, and he can do it all. So very polished and complete wide out there. This Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce team. Here at the 3.8, we've got a lot of ways that we could go about this. You've got yourself a established RB1. He's not necessarily probably going to be a top 3 or 4 guy, but he very well could be in that top 6, 7 range. I think Nick Chubb, one of the safer options at RB. You've got yourself an elite, the premier tight end in Travis Kelce. And so I think that I take this opportunity to look at my receivers, but to be honest, I think the
get a little risky.
I think the value I'm getting out of my quarterbacks is safer, and the production is heightened. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Josh Allen here because I know that these receivers I'd be reaching on here at the 3.8, even though their age is great. You see, obviously, the 2 stars, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, coming out of the draft are right there in ADP, but at this point, it's not worth the reach. You can get those tier of players in the 4th and 5th rounds. So no reason to overpay. Take your guy, Josh Allen. This is where the pick should be going.
I think I'd call that number 8 spot team the SFS team. Yeah. It's almost like the consistency team, the guys that might not be in the center of everyone's mind when they're thinking of who they're going to pick, but they are guys who are always going to be nice on the stat sheet for fantasy. So that's a very nice team.
Yeah, those are all some of the best players in our consistency rankings, which is a huge part of what we're researching this offseason for our draft guide. And those are some of the most dependable options in fantasy lineups that we project for this next season. So I love that team, like you said. I think those are all great options. And I think where a lot of people might get hung up on some of our picks, some issues you guys might have with it is that, you can see the ADPs on the screen there, and we're not really listening to those. We're really not at all. Lamar Jackson, according to this, should have went where Justin Jefferson went. Yeah. But do I think Lamar Jackson is a very viable and relevant fantasy quarterback? Absolutely. Do I think he should be picked very highly and with a valuable pick in a dynasty startup? 100%, even in redraft purposes. But taking value and just solely basing your draft off ADP is not what wins you the league. The value is nice, and it's nice to find in the later rounds where you can get some steals, but here you got to go for the upside. You got to go big or go home in these first 3 rounds, but manage your risk and your reward, and that's what we did with this team. Nick Chubb, great safe option, nice ceiling at running back. Travis Kelce, there is no one better at the position for ceiling or floor, and then Josh Allen has a pretty darn good floor with one of the best ceilings in fantasy at the quarterback position. It's too good to pass up in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Here, it might just be another one of those running backs. We haven't taken Antonio Gibson. He's still there. And even those rookies are still sitting there. We got Najee Harris. James Robinson is still there, who might actually be one of the safer guys that's going to get a little more catches. But I don't know if that's strong enough. I'm not sure if this team is strong enough, but James Robinson does get catches. So
I think it'd be a floor team at that point. So I think DK gives you nice upside, but Jacobs and Robinson are both low ceiling players.
Yeah, but I think that I'm going to go James Robinson here, pair him with Josh Jacobs. It's safe. So that could be the kind of team that is very waiver wire driven, trying to get those steals, and also possibly making trades. This could be a kind of team that builds it kind of evolves throughout the season.
Right. In all fantasy formats, especially Dynasty, you are not locked into your team or really committed to these guys whatsoever. Yeah. You've got draft picks. You can flip those and just get going crazy. I mean, what do you do, 20 trades in your Dynasty?
Oh, yeah. I've got like 4 first-round picks.
I think you have 5.
I may have 5 first-round picks. So,
and it's a credit to Eric because what we both saw this season was we picked really young guys in our startup draft, and we projected a lot of players, And so halfway through the season, when we're like, we're not winning this thing, we tore down and we traded away some aging vets to contending teams, bolstered up our crew of draft capital, and now we're both looking great heading into this season. So that's another option. That's a explanation for another time, another video. We'll get into how to rebuild
maybe a little
Dynasty
Patreon
team,
video. You'll have to check in.
Another thing, go check out that Patreon. So here at the 310, we've got Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson. You've got your running back, you've got your receiver. Where do we go next? And I think, really what I'm thinking about here, Dynasty League, Derrick Henry, he's great. We know how good he is, but how much longer can we depend on him?
Yeah.
I think it's time that you put that next level guy in place and let him develop. I'm going to pair Derrick Henry with a lot of what people would say would be his comp coming out of the draft. I'm going to go Najee Harris here. Obviously, we don't know where Najee Harris is going to land. We don't know who's going to draft him. That plays a huge part in this. But for now, February 9th is the date of recording this video of 2021. Najee Harris is going to this team at the back end of the third round.
They need to get him a picture. What are they doing?
They don't have the rookies yet. So they're not in the system.
I love Najee Harris. He's very, very talented, and he is a beast, but he can also catch, which is something that we really love.
Yeah.
Which is something that Derrick Henry doesn't do, but I think he could if they taught him, but it's just not part of their offense.
One thing I can already feel the storm in the comment section. Like, why is Clyde Edwards-Helaire still on the board with an ADP of 8.5? Here's the thing, you guys. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He could be the number 1 overall running back in fantasy if he didn't get 6 carries a game.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Clyde in the Super Bowl, he went bonkers.
Yeah.
He got like 5 touches, though.
Yeah.
The Chiefs don't care about running the ball. It's that simple. Even when he runs those flare routes, they don't target him. They're always looking 30 yards downfield. If Clyde got the volume and the opportunity, I'd be smashing the draft button so fast, putting him in the first round even. But he just doesn't see the workload that you need to be investing that much of a draft pick in him. And sure, his ceiling is great, but one of the things we're talking about here is floor. He doesn't do so hot with that, especially after what we saw this season.
You can see that Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce went in the first 2 rounds. And that's
passing
what
game.
it is.
It's passing game.
That's their offense. That's why they're so high, because those are the 2 that get the ball from the 1, and the 1 throws it all day long. It's kind of like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And then Cole Beasley had a very good season as well. And they've got some younger guys that are stepping up. But here we took Stephon Diggs and Cam Akers. I think here this might be another quarterback pick. It might even be time for Lamar Jackson. I know that we kind of said you don't need to go for Lamar Jackson, but he's going to give you fantasy numbers. His run game is so nice to have. I'm hoping that they can put together a better passing situation for him. He's not a great pocket passer, but if they did more play action, he needs some people to throw to. Marquise Brown isn't a terrible receiver, but he's kind of just a speed demon, and Lamar Jackson isn't really built for throwing to those kind of guys, especially with their scheme.
If he's not running deep, he's not separating at a high level on the underneath and intermediate routes.
And where Lamar, he can throw the ball.
Lamar is not an excellent tight window thrower, so he needs a guy who's going to pop open with some cushion.
It needs to be, if they drafted another tight end, I wouldn't even be surprised. In that second round, they might even get Freiermuth and pair him with Andrews, and they need to run like some play action with him, just like Trubisky with the Bears, where the guy is wide open. They do it with Kmet. He's just sitting there, so all Trubisky has to do is his running thing and then just throw it down, and that's all you have to do. It's just like a run. But here, I think Lamar Jackson is the pick. You have Stephon Diggs. You have Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers is possibly could be a top 10 running back this year. The Rams offense should be pretty nice with Stafford. He'll open up the run game maybe even more than Goff did. Clearly, Stafford's better than Goff, and I do think that the Lions won that trade, but Stafford is going to be able to run that offense really well and finally have an offense that has the pieces in place for him to win some games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. Here, our last pick of, I'm actually going to select both of these. So at the 112 here, we got Mahomes, A.J. Brown. We don't have a running back on this team yet. So I'm going to go double up on running back because you can't walk away from rounds 1 through 4 without one, let alone two. Because this team sacrificed running back early, you kind of have to backtrack. And this is an example of, you overlooked the running back position. Now your depth is getting thinner, your upside is getting thinner, so you need to almost double dip here to make sure you don't get screwed over and in a position where you don't have anyone to choose from. So
you've got some guys, Antonio Gibson,
yep,
ATN. You've still got Joe Mixon up there.
We do have Joe Mixon.
There's still Clyde, and David Montgomery is definitely a guy that deserves a chance. He deserves a chance.
That first pick, I'm going to have to go with Antonio Gibson. I've got the youth. I've got the dynamic ability as a pass catcher. And I really like what he did in his rookie season.
Yeah.
The thing that worries me about Antonio Gibson is that Washington did not invest high draft capital into him. He was a third-round pick.
Yeah.
So I worry in the slightest bit that they might go in and get a guy
we hate to see it.
Split the backfield.
It's sometimes it happens.
The fantasy. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It's the fantasy volume cutter.
Yeah. It's terrible.
It's a disaster. So that's my worry with Gibson, but we're going to go with him there. And then I'm going to go with Joe Mixon here. I think he's also probably the next safest bet at the running back position. He was on pace for a massive workload prior to his injury early on this year. So those are going to be our final picks in this draft and conclude our first mock draft for the first 3 rounds here of 2021 Dynasty content. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, we appreciate each and every single one of you guys that stops around here on the channel.
And watching the whole video.
Yeah,
how about that?
If you made it to this point, let us know in the comment section and we'll give you a little shout out. So thank you guys so much for all you've done. Go check out that Patreon one more time before we head out of here, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.